Is now in session. We will now call the meeting to order. Mrs. Fox, may we have a roll call vote, please? I'm sorry, may we have, a roll call.
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Present.
Ms. Heindrich?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Turner? Dr. Turner?
Present.
Myself, Mabel Fox, and Terry Weems,
I'm here.
and Cheryl.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect, we have a quorum, thank you. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now move to items from the president. We first need an approval of the agenda. Do we have an approval of the agenda? Mrs. Heinrich?
I move to approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of Education, Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, as presented.
Support.
A motion was made to approve the agenda by Mrs. Heinrich, supported by Mr. Walker. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. We will now move to announcements. Okay. First of all, welcome to the meeting. I want to acknowledge first that some of you may be here specifically to talk about a few items that are on the agenda for this evening. The first is a recommended policy change to policy 4005, specifically regarding the prohibition of referral or assistance, which we've received a lot of correspondence about, and I also know that has received some media attention. So I want to share some facts, and I also want to provide an update on what the board plans on voting, discussing, and potentially voting on today, so for the avoidance of any confusion. First, the facts. The current policy reads, all district employees, board members, and school officials must provide instruction in sex education in strict compliance with MCL 380.1507 of the revised school code. In addition, all district employees, board members, and school officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. Pursuant to state law, district personnel found to be in violation of this policy will be assessed a fine by the district of no less than 3% of his or her annual compensation. The district will refund the state school aid fund in an amount equal to any fines applied to or collected from district personnel under this policy. Our attorney, Miller Johnson, provided recommendations on changes to this policy and recommended striking this policy in its entirety, simply reflective of a change made in state law. Specifically, the State School Aid Act was amended to remove the express prohibition. As the existence of a policy was no longer required by the law, the recommendation that districts strike it was made. It's my understanding that this guidance was given to all school districts across the state who have Miller Johnson as a provider, and also Neola, who is a very popular provider of services, made that same recommendation to all school districts. The School Aid Act used to provide that school districts that did not have a policy specifically prohibiting referrals would be fined, and that any act would result in a fine. It's my understanding that this was stricken from the code, that a fine would be enacted for not having a policy. So districts were fined if they did not have a specific prohibition policy. That language has been taken out of the school code. I'm not sure why, but the provisions for not allowing school district employees and board members and such to make recommendations is still prohibited. That is still prohibited. It is not appropriate in any circumstance. What has been changed is the fine that would be levied against school districts if they don't have a policy. Because there is no longer a requirement to have a specific policy, and because our philosophy with respect to policy development is not to have repetitive policies, like I said, the policies that we have still would make it inappropriate for a staff member to make that kind of referral or to make any kind of referrals for things that would be inappropriate. Similarly, we've had discussions about staff members not referring students to go purchase a gun, staff members not referring students to go have medical procedures. All of that stuff would be completely inappropriate in accordance with guidance and policies. We don't need to have specific policies specifically stating all of the things that district personnel should not be doing. In that one instance, though, because the school code provided that if a district did not have a specific prohibition related to this matter, it would be fined, that language was taken out, which is why there was a recommendation to take out the policy. The elimination of the policy does not create a direct line to teaching staff, encouraging them to get abortions, or to provide opportunity for staff to support a student's pursuit. Policies 4000, 4004, 4005, and Administrative Regulation 4003-AR all contain language that would suggest that such advocacy would not be appropriate. Additionally, Policy 4005 incorporates by reference Michigan Code of Educational Ethics, whose principles number 1, 2, 3, and 4 all contain language that advocacy for abortion would not be appropriate. Additionally, MCL 380.1507 and 8 regarding sexual education provide that under the definition of family planning, which is a subject taught, that clinical abortion shall not be considered a method of family planning, nor shall abortion be taught as a method of reproductive health. This means that abortion cannot be taught in sex education class, and Michigan law also generally requires parent consent before a physician is permitted to terminate a minor's pregnancy. The policy committee generally takes the position that we don't need to create policies where policies and practices already exist. We do not need to be repetitive. The only reason for having this policy in the first place was because the state code required a specific prohibition, and now it does not. Because of that, we were considering striking the policy. However, because this has been a past policy and because of public concern, despite all of the other policies that exist, the policy committee is now recommending that rather than strike the full policy, to retain a portion of that policy, which would include all districts, employees, board members, and school officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. That is recommended to be retained. In addition, we're recommending adding the following sentence, that this does not apply to district employees, board members, and school officials who are parents or legal guardians of that student. So I just wanted to make sure that anyone who is here to speak on this topic today, I wanted to make sure that you should know what the board is planning to vote on, what the facts around this are, and that our proposal is not to strike the language in its entirety, but to preserve some of that language. Another discussion topic for today is on the athletic bid, specifically to purchase scoreboards. There are two options. The first is to consider scoreboards with video at an incremental cost of about $400,000, and the second is a proposal to update scoreboards without video. The board has asked the district to conduct a facilities planning analysis to ensure that all needs are being met and also to highlight what benefits an additional investment would yield so that we can make a determination about whether that incremental cost is worth it, and I expect to have a healthy discussion about that today. Earlier today, the board met this afternoon in closed session to discuss superintendent goals and progress on those goals. In addition to the areas that we look at as part of the formal evaluation process, which include governance, board relations, staff relations, community relations, budgeting and finance, and instructional leadership, we've also developed some goals with our interim superintendent around communications, the development and launch of a strategic planning dashboard, which we previously presented at a board meeting, development of short-term and long-term space allocations for current FPS students, and the development of dashboards which reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. The superintendent is progressing very nicely on these. The board provided some feedback on progress that has been met today and is generally pleased. As I said, there was good conversation around additional things the board would like to see us continue doing. And I want to thank Dr. Coffin for all the work she's doing. And I also want to thank so many people who've been providing feedback, both verbally and in written communication to myself and the rest of the board. To that end, the Farmington Public Schools Board of Education has entered the next phase excuse me, of its superintendent search process. Beginning yesterday, the Board of Education began seeking feedback from the community on their thoughts on what characteristics, qualities, and skills they would like to see in the new superintendent. Yesterday was the first session. It was for FPS staff and community members. The next session is Tuesday, October 29th at 10:30 a.m. from 10:30 to 11:30 at this facility here, Maxfield Education Center, I apologize. And then there is a virtual session for anyone who is not able to attend in person on Monday, November 4th at 7 p.m. After that last community engagement session, the Superintendent's Succession Planning Committee, which consists of myself, the Vice President, and the former President of the Farmington School Board, will meet to discuss next steps, and we will share those next steps with the community as soon as that's done. Also, people should know that there are many opportunities to also express written feedback, and you can do so on our website. So in addition to those in-person sessions, the virtual session, there are opportunities for people to provide written feedback as well. I want to express my, early congratulations to the Powder Puff girls tonight. I know that the Farmington Powder Puff game was last week. Powder Puff, if you're not familiar, is a girls' football game between seniors and juniors. It's usually a lot of fun. It's usually held during homecoming week. I have two daughters right now that are in Farmington Public Schools and a third that played in the Power Puff Girls session a couple of years ago, who is now in college. I am deeply regretting that I am not able to be there to support both the 11th graders and the 12th graders, but I am wishing them both all the best because they are both playing in the 11th and 12th grade. So good luck. I wish I could be there. College application day is coming up for seniors who are looking for early decision. That is November 1st. If you are a parent or a senior, you have until November 1st to apply to college if you are looking for early decision. I'm happy that the district held a college application day on Friday, October 18th to help students. There is also a Paying for College Financial Aid 101 session for parents and students on October 24th. That is being held at North Farmington by the counseling team and the Michigan Department of Treasury in the Media Center at 6 p.m. Last week, I had an opportunity to attend the senior adult breakfast. I believe Mrs. Heinrich was there along with Mrs. Fox was also there. Really great day. Congratulations to Megan Saunders, who was identified as the Volunteer of the Year, a great community member who volunteers regularly in our schools. I want to also thank Debbie Kuna, who nominated her. I want to just spend a few minutes talking about what I saw at that community breakfast. I noticed lots of kids doing lots of great things. First, when you walked in, there were kids holding signs, chanting K-I-N-D, and it was just extremely heartwarming. They were so enthusiastic. They greeted every single person who walked through that door, and it was really hard to walk away from that without a smile. I noticed Henry and others from the Hack Box at your table. That was also heartwarming. The STEAM robotics team was there. Hillside second graders were explaining the 7 habits of highly successful young people. Another school was showcasing the books that they had published. An elementary school was having their students have their pieces published in actual books, which was great. And I also learned from a virtual student who was in the 8th grade attending our virtual program who is studying to be an engineer. There were musical performances by the North Farmington High School Choir and the Farmington High School String Ensemble, and they were just excellent examples of the talent that our students have. Another group from Gill were passing out handmade bracelets and bookmarks, and I picked up one for each one of you to share. Because they have some really great sayings on the back, and all of us read books, and I often am in need of a bookmark. I usually fold the page, and so now I'm going to save my books and use my bookmark. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I would like to end my announcements there on choosing kindness. That's it for me. Thank you. Next, we will move to public comment. All right, so for public comment, we, as a reminder at the start of this school year, we now provide, at least until the superintendent search process is complete, 2 opportunities. We ask that you only speak once, but you have 2 opportunities. For some folks who like to get in and out, and you don't want to listen to this riveting board meeting, you don't have to stay. And for those of you who don't get here until later for work commitments or whatever the case may be, there's another opportunity for you to provide public comment. But we ask that you only do one. There's one opportunity, but you have 2 times to do it. We're trying to provide some more flexibility. All right, so I'm going to start. You have 3 minutes in general. There will be a timer up here. We ask that you please refrain from stating names. We ask that you be respectful. We want to be in a kind and constructive environment. And I believe I've covered most of the protocols around that. So the first person we have is Wendy Arnold. And next we have Liz Buckner, just so you know that you're up next. Welcome, Ms. Arnold.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to put in a public comment regarding the vote that you are about to take tonight. I've been an advocate in this district for families for approximately 15 years now. I have 2 boys that graduated from this district, and my daughter now is at Vision. She is special needs. She graduated 2 years ago from North Farmington High School. By voting to change, to not allow teachers to discuss all options on the table for reproductive health, takes away a safety that students sometimes look to teachers as their only safe net. Personally, I have not been in that situation nor had that situation where a child in the high school has become pregnant that I know of and needs options. But many do not have a safe place at home to go to talk to their parents, nor do they have family members that they can talk to. Sometimes teachers are the last defense. And when you start silencing teachers or dictating to them what they can or cannot discuss, to me, that is a First Amendment right of speech violation that should not be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And we invite anyone who wants to speak on this topic the opportunity to do so. I do want to make mention that this body does not make that decision. This is bound by the state of Michigan. You are again welcome to share with us, but the sex education curriculum is not something that this Board of Education develops. That is.
I've already been in contact with the state.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to make sure that people know what this board has the authority over and what it does not. Liz Buckner and then Kurt Valor. I apologize if I'm butchering your name. Welcome.
Thank you for giving me these couple of minutes. Wendy said it beautifully. I would also like to add that the discussion of abortion, not abortion, is religious. It's based on religion. There are religions in this country and in this world that think life begins with the first breath. So to restrict abortion in any way would go against other people's religious faith. Abortion is health care. We have codified that law in this state saying that women are allowed to have whatever health care they need regarding pregnancy. By restricting that in any way, by telling women, telling teachers that they can't talk to people about educating them about what's important, how they can go about doing something. Nobody's asking a teacher to say, this is exactly how an abortion takes place, or this is how a pill is being made. But it's important that students have a place that they can go where they feel safe, because they're not always safe at home, that they can get the information. There can be a pamphlet that says, here are some options for you. Go to Planned Parenthood. But to restrict what teachers are saying, it's the same thing as banning books in my mind. And I'm appalled that this is even a question. I would like the entire thing struck. The state of Michigan now says we don't have to have those rules and regulations. Don't dilute it. Women have a right to have health care as men do. Nobody would ever say to a teacher, I'm sorry, we can't talk about jock hitch for a boy. That's medical care too, just like anything to do with birth control is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kirk Valor, followed by Michael Cahill.
I'm going to speak from the other side of the fence. I'm not for abortion. I believe in good health care. I believe all of that. But we're talking about a child here, not an adult woman in these cases. And that's a major difference. What you're promoting by saying a child should have that option to go someplace else, I understand sometimes that's needed. And the schools have options in the cases of abuse. In other special situations, there's people for them to call on and to go to. And the teachers can direct them to that direction. But having the teachers involved themselves is too easy for them, either side, to say and direct them whether they're pro-abortion or against abortion. It's too easy for a teacher to direct them based on their beliefs one way or the other. That's taking away from parents' rights. At the end of the day, it's parents that should be having the right. Yes, you may have a parent that you don't feel like going to, but what kid in their life hasn't been in that situation on a whole host of things? That's a fact of life. The other thing is to say that this is the same as jock itch. How demeaning is that to a human being? That is disgusting. And if we have made it up to that belittlement of a human being, I hope to God some of us can see that's not true. Now, that's not the discussion I was planning to have here. My discussion was that I'm thankful and hopeful the board will leave this in, just to make it clear. Teachers have enough to keep their hands full. And there are options. I mean, we make it sound like there are no options for kids. There are options. So teachers can direct them to the appropriate people that are more skilled in doing this. That's my opinion. I'm hoping that's what you will stand with in keeping this in, to make it very clear what teachers, because they have their hands full on dealing with kids and all kinds of issues today. That's my comment on the general comment on this topic. I have a related comment. Hope you will improve. There is no search engine within trying to do research, trying to understand, looking for policies. It's very difficult. If here's a topic you want to, and this wasn't the only topic I was looking into, there's others. You have to spend excruciating time to find some of those. And I finally reached out to Mr. Walker and said, hey, can you help me? And thank you, he did. But I'm betting there's other people that have been in this whole boat at other times trying to find, you have a topic that you hear about and you're interested and want to go research. So hopefully you can maybe fix that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Cahill and then Mark Forshee.
Hi, Hi, I'm the athletic coordinator at Farmington High School, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit here for a minute and speak on the, try to advocate for the benefits of athletics to our high school students and community as a whole. Having been in education for over 25 years now, I understand the financial constraints our district faces on a daily basis. Money is tight, and priorities for where we allocate it must be carefully considered. While I do not want to diminish the needs of other programs or departments, I would like to advocate for the benefits that a modern, well-funded athletics program can bring to the district. The evidence is abundant that athletic success leads to greater interest in academic institutions on the collegiate level, and with the freedom of movement between districts these days, it is showing up more and more on the high school level too. We are losing students to neighboring schools, both public and private, due to sports. This is unfortunate, but it is the reality. So the question becomes why? The first engagement visitors have with our schools when they attend athletic events is with our facilities. And while we are a leader when it comes to our track and our multiple outdoor turf fields, after that we are lagging behind our peers. If you attend a football, soccer, lacrosse game, or track meet in Novi, Birmingham, West Bloomfield, or Walled Lake, you will immediately notice their large video scoreboards. We cannot host district playoff games in basketball, wrestling, or volleyball at Farmington High due to our maximum gym capacity of just over 650 patrons, less than half what our conference neighbors can offer. These are missed opportunities to showcase our school in a positive light that could lead to tangible benefits like increased enrollment and retention of our own student athletes, but it goes beyond just the numbers. Anyone who got on the Tigers' late season bandwagon this fall or is loving this improbable rise of our own Detroit Lions knows how sports can unite and galvanize a community. Anyone who has participated in high school athletics likely has indelible memories of their time spent with teammates, pushing themselves to heights they didn't think possible, and coming together as one team in pursuit of a common goal. Sports teach so many valuable life lessons about overcoming adversity and dealing with success, and for many of our most vulnerable student athletes, sports are what keep them coming to school, maintaining an academic and behavioral standard so they can do the sport they love in front of friends, family, and fans. I'm not sure there's a better return on investment than money spent on sports in high school, and as we consider these difficult financial decisions, I hope we can keep that in mind. Thank you for your time, and go Falcons.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Forshee, followed by Henrietta Forshee.
For decades, I've heard people say we must have more money for schools and we'll get better schools. Decades of this. In the 21st century, we have reached the point where the philosophy and the schools and the things that are taught, what's happening now is the schools need less money. Oh, shock. Because we're getting better results. Reading, math, history, starting with Howard Zinn in 1980, et cetera. The tilt toward America's bad, oh, terrible, terrible. And gender, and then DEI. We don't hear about character being built. We don't hear about good hearts being built as within the framework of school teaching. And what about developing great minds that can read literature from centuries that we've honored? I couldn't even find Paradise Lost in the library. It took 2 weeks just to get that, a classic of 400 years. And that's what's happening in the schools too. We're losing our classics and many other things. So I'm amused by the money issue. I saw this board, some numbers were reeled off. Oh, we're spending $22 million. Everyone, as always, this board is 100% unanimous. It's a monopoly and has been for a number of years. They spent $22 million in 2 minutes. No discussion. So don't tell me about, oh, we're starving for money. You have lots of money. And so I am voting no, and I urge everyone to vote no on this millage for the schools because we're getting terrible results. I went to a public school in Detroit. I still remember what I learned there. They were actually good schools at one time, but that's a long time ago. And I'm really disturbed that we're paying a fortune and getting worse results by this. And also about abortion, I noticed that pro-abortion people never talk about the grisly procedures in abortions. It's not pretty. There's nothing pretty about it at all. And they never talk about the pain of babies in the womb that they usually feel. Those two subjects are never mentioned. We're supposed to believe it's just a glob that we just throw away. So this is a very serious matter, and we're moving along, the state is moving us toward where we're going to have teachers and other people in the schools saying, well, we'll tell you where to go for an abortion. Oh, Planned Parenthood is great. That's where we're going with this. This is what you're talking about now. It's just a step along the way. So I am strongly opposed to that, and I wish we'd talk about the issues of pain and the procedure of abortion and get that whole reality out so the general public knows it's not just like removing a wart. Thank you.
Henrietta Forshey, and then I believe this is Mike Steele.
Hello. I'm an occupational therapist, and I thought that, when I saw the notice about what the board was considering, someone had passed me a woman's health issues notice, and I myself had never seen this, and so I was thinking about those students, and you talk about the sex education, and I know that you mentioned that that's not up to you, but if anyone else considered it, because I didn't consider this about what's happening to teenagers who are already going through enough hormonal changes to dizzy them. This is called, through a Women's Health Issues publication, Newton's third law of motion is about physical interaction between two objects. Two forces happen, one action, two reaction. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Number one, hormonal changes. Abortion ends a pregnancy artificially. Abortion shocks the body. This is why pregnancy tests can be positive many weeks after an abortion. I'm thinking about those teenagers that go through this. They're too much in a political thing rather than thinking about what's happening to these poor kids. So hormonal adjustments can lead to postpartum depression, feeling overwhelmed, guilty, angry, or numb. Feeling empty because of the hormone oxytocin was streaming through the mother's body. This hormone wires women to bond with their children and remain strong for several weeks after the abortion. So they're going through that too. Number two, breast tissue development. Tender breasts and nipples are the number one sign of pregnancy. Estrogen and progesterone levels change to prepare for breastfeeding. These hormones impact breast tissue, nipples, and other parts of the body. 3, lactation. Hormones begin to make milk in the breasts of the pregnant woman. Breasts can produce milk several weeks after abortion, so they're going through that. And then I found this one to really be important for its cellular connection. A study from the International Journal of Epidemiology outlines the biological phenomenon known as microchimerism. During pregnancy, mother and child exchange small quantities of cells. The ongoing cellular presence of this child in the mother's body is called microchimerism. Every mother has a biological connection with every child in her womb at a cellular level until she dies. And the 5th one is cancer. There's a higher risk of breast cancer for some women in later years. So it's almost like the baby's birth, is protecting them. I just thought it was really interesting and that maybe that's not considered when this is going on. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike Steele, followed by John Hurston.
Good evening. My name is Mike Steele, and I have had the privilege of serving as the Farmington High Band Director for the last 24 years. I'd like to speak with you about the prospect of lighting our secondary or auxiliary field as part of the scoreboard issue you're talking about. In that time, our band has been asked to use about every available space at Farmington High School. We've used parking lots where it's bad on joints, we have to march around cars. We've used a grass field that's incredibly divoted and inconsistently marked. Before turf, we were deemed to be unnecessary wear and tear on the natural grass, and the turf was supposed to kind of solve this problem. Scheduling has been one of the hardest challenges of my job since I've been here at Farmington. We're often scheduled around other sports. This necessitates evening practices for us. Our 100-person band also requires a full field. Most times this is the auxiliary or secondary field for us. The stadium is the only safe and wholly usable field in all seasons. We have 3 soccer teams, 2 football teams, and 1 band to schedule, so it's a complicated process. We've tried shifting weekly schedules to take advantage of unused stadium time, but this is problematic with 8 working staff members and 100 students who are trying to coordinate shifting practice schedules with that's changing every week. Field sharing is not an option. When our band was smaller, we used to be able to share a field. We ran into additional problems of balls entering the band formations, which is in itself dangerous. Our band has more than doubled in size in the last 5 years. We're marching 100 students this year, very proud of that. I hope this is because of the good work we're doing and the positive experiences that we provide students. We expect greater growth in the future because of the 6th grade performing arts requirement and the wonderful bond instrument investment that the board has made. Our present situation is that most of our practices are on the auxiliary field. That's about 2/3 of our fall practices. We rehearse 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. as there's no access before due to other activities and to accommodate our staff's jobs. Summertime is typically not an issue for us. Returning from band camp, we see early September sunsets at 8 p.m. Last night it was 6:40. We are left with whatever residual and reflective light we get from the stadium. Visibility is a performance and a safety issue. Our musicians are often moving around blindly, backwards, sideways, and our performers are unable to see their drum majors, the leaders on the field. We had a student break a foot last year in the dark on the practice field. Our school has rented lights in the past, but this has been inconsistent and unreliable. I'm hoping that lighting the auxiliary field is going to make it more accessible to all the activities and the community. It does not need to be stadium quality lighting. It just needs to be safe for student use at all times. And hopefully by making it available to more activities during different times, that will also free up perhaps stadium usage for the band. So I hope that you consider the advantage to our students in the community with 2 lighted fields. Our band in particular would be most appreciative. In the last 2 seconds, you should all come to our Bandorama next Wednesday at 7 p.m.
That was super efficient and tight, okay? Next, we have John Herstein, thank you. Your H looks like an N.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
And then we have Linda Larson.
Well, first of all, I want to thank hey everybody. I want to thank the board for having us up here to talk. John Herstein, I coach, teach in the district, and also a member of the community almost 20 years now. I got a kid who's in the 2nd grade, and I got another one that's about to enter the schools. I came here to also speak about the improvements to the facilities, and particularly to the athletics. We're very lucky with what we've had, but it's also an opportunity where we can do better and really make it a centerpiece for our community. When you think about what we have and what we've been around, and you look at the communities nearby with the video boards and the lighting that he spoke about for the auxiliary fields, those are the types of innovations that we need to continue to strive for. Ourselves being able to play in the surrounding communities, the Birmingham schools and Novi's, it really does make for a terrific game day experience that's not just for athletics, to be honest. It's something that all students, the entire community can rally behind. The way it impacts the game, the way it rallies the fans, the way it provides feedback, it can be tied into the band. It can really be something that isn't just an athletics piece, but also something for the whole school. We're currently right now, our scoreboard at North, you can't even see some of the numbers sometimes and things like that, so it's in desperate need. And I think this could be an opportunity where we go ahead and we go and make it really great. When you think about myself with young kids, I look at ways to tie in the community, having a video board that we can use to have movie nights with PTSAs of elementary schools, an opportunity to earn funds, and not to mention student retention. All of a sudden those kids are at our high schools and they're thinking, gosh, someday I'm going to be at North or Farmington. I want to stay with Farmington Public Schools, and they build a community around it. So there's another avenue there where we can make it more about the community and not necessarily just about athletics. Another piece with it as a coach and also as a teacher, it's an opportunity where you can provide feedback. There's no greater way to teach somebody to move in physical education class than showing video of themselves or a video of other people doing it where they can see how the activity is performed. And as a coach, it's an opportunity where you can use that feedback throughout the practice. So it really wouldn't be just, hey, here at the track meet, we're going to have the times up and this and that, which is great interaction, but really you can make it something that is done all the time and really a centerpiece of the schools. And I'll just leave it with this, as you continue to push for student retention, we've got great young kids and our numbers are coming up, we really want to keep those. And for the modest cost, it's really a great opportunity to keep those kids in. So thank you so much, my time's up.
Thank you. Next, we have Linda Larson, and then we have Bill Lovaway.
Thank you. I've been a resident for 30 years, and my daughters went to the Farmington Public Schools. This is an issue that is important to me because I think it has a lot to do with integrity and honesty. If there are young pregnant women in our schools and they come to someone asking for information, I think it is extremely important that they are given the full range of information. I don't think that we should have the right to bias them one way or another by eliminating certain choices from the information that they're given. I also question some of the language that I've read. I think maybe it was online, so that's iffy. But they were talking about school officials referring young women for abortions. And I'm not sure that I don't think that's happening. I think that what would happen, or what I would hope would happen, is that this young person would be given information that says there's this choice, this choice, this choice, and then they, and hopefully their parents and other people, would be able to come up with what solution is the best for them. So again, I think it's about honesty and integrity and transparency. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Bill Lovaway, followed by Nomi Joyrich.
Thank you. I brought along the poster that I got a copy of. I brought along the poster that I had a copy of. This was from the entryway to Our Lady of Sorrows Church, and this month is the recognizing the children in babies, in fetuses. Now, what I like to do is I sent along a copy of an article I had from the Detroit News by Caitlin Buss. Thought I'd read from that because I thought she did a pretty good job of looking at the issues. She said, abortion certainly is the political issue, but it's much more than that. If a student is considering receiving one, it transcends from the political to the personal and medical and religious. That's what that's all about. That makes it a parental responsibility. The school doesn't have any role in that, period. Since it is ultimately about the health and safety of the student, it is outrageous that any school board trustee would argue that school staff could have the only crack at advising the student on such a decision, or that the issue isn't important enough to merit 2 sentences in the handbook. And I would have appreciated this kind of a discussion when this issue was first brought to the board last meeting. Democrats have laid the groundwork for a new radically pro-abortion environment throughout the state and specifically in schools. Now they want you to trust them and the teachers' unions that won't talk to students about abortion without good reason. To boot, they see no difference between political campaigning about a hot-button issue and putting the student's life and mental health at risk. And this is a quote from one of the trustees from Birmingham. I just make the assumption that my children's teachers are not crossing that line. Don't hold your breath. That's got to be happening. That's putting a lot of faith in a group that may not share your family's values and aren't the ones who have to deal with the aftermath of such a monumental decision. And I would suggest there's another alternative. It's adoption.
Thank you. Now we have Nomi Joyrich. Thank you. followed by Adrian Basella. And that is the last public comment card that I have. If anyone is interested in a public comment card, please bring it up to Ms. Ramona Mayberry here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nomi Joyrich, and I'm the Michigan Director for Jews for a Secular Democracy. Our mission is to protect the separation of religion and government. And I've also been a resident here for over 2 decades and raised my daughters here. Before I was a full-time social justice advocate, I was a school social worker, and prior to that, I was a pregnancy counselor at an Indian health board. So the topic of talking to public school teens about reproductive health care is the exact intersection of my entire professional expertise. During my many years in public schools, I met many kids for whom school was their primary and only safe space. I will never forget the very first month that I was a school social worker when there was a young boy who ran away from his abusive parents, and he ran to the one and only safe place in his life, the school. I could give countless examples of kids who have had no one to trust outside of the school. Students and school staff often share a bond of trust that cannot be duplicated in any other setting. As a pregnancy counselor, I witnessed how scared girls were when they were facing a pregnancy. Some of them hid it from their parents, some of them were kicked out of their homes and living on the streets, and some of them, more than should have been, were impregnated by their fathers. In 2022, Michiganders voted overwhelmingly to enshrine abortion rights in our Constitution, but one law has not changed, and that is the requirement for minors to receive parental consent in order to get an abortion. The only exception to that is judicial bypass, and this is an avenue available to minors who are not safe going to their parents. So it's important to remember that even if a teacher provides a referral for an abortion, the minor will not be able to access it without parental consent or judicial decree. So there is no need to worry that our children will be obtaining medical intervention without our knowledge. This great nation was founded on the principle of the separation of religion and government. And we must remember that there is no religious freedom without reproductive freedom. The only objections to reproductive freedom are religious ones, and these have no place in public school. No teacher would hesitate to offer a student the name of a low-cost public health clinic or a dentist, and in the same vein, teachers must have the freedom to talk about all safe and legal medical procedures. To single out one form of safe and legal health care is due only to religious objections is a violation of the separation of religion and government. Teaching about health care without talking about abortion is only telling part of the story. And for these reasons, I urge you to remove the muzzle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next, we have Adrian Basella, followed by Sunday Taylor.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a registered nurse, and I am the nurse manager at Another Way Pregnancy Center in Farmington Hills, and I'm representing just everyone that has concerns about a non-medical person giving medical advice to anyone, really. It's dangerous for teachers to be recommending or referring for abortions to young women and girls, especially with the access to abortion pills online. So I disagree with what was just said. A teacher or a person at the school could say, you can go on this website or that website, and you can order abortion pills to be delivered to your home. And in that case, there is no rules for parental consent. And I would like to say there are many risks to abortion physically, and also mentally and emotionally. But physically, if you think about it as a parent, your child is hemorrhaging in the bathroom, or has an infection from an incomplete abortion, or had a perforated uterus or some damage to the cervix, and you as a parent don't know what's going on with your child, and they're having a medical emergency in your home, you don't necessarily know how to handle that. And state law says that if you take your child to an emergency room, that unless it's life-threatening, that there needs to be parental consent for treatment in an emergency room. So if there's not, any knowledge by the parent to even help the child properly, women have died for undiagnosed ectopic pregnancies, taking abortion pills. And I would suggest that if girls are really being counseled properly, that they would be put into the vein of going to a pregnancy center and learning about their options and the actual procedures that would be performed on them and the risks and the other options to their pregnancy, so they would have an educated decision to make. As far as judicial bypass, girls do get that most frequently that I've seen. I have not heard of any girl being denied judicial bypass if she did choose abortion. So I just think it's very dangerous for, and possibly coercion and a change of the girl's mind by the person that's counseling her at a school. If a counselor says, well, you're just too young and, this isn't the right time for you, look at all the plans that you have for your life, that might sway a girl to say, I want to have an abortion, and not really look at how that might affect her and impact her for the rest of her life. There are lots of complications emotionally and spiritually after having an abortion. And I will say, from my own experience, I aborted a pregnancy, and that is something you live with for the rest of your life. And then to add on top of that, if you have any physical complications, you deal with that the rest of your life as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sunday Taylor, followed by Jacob Kahn.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sunday Taylor. I'm a parent in the district. I was a longtime foster parent of the year for Orchard's Children's Services. I spent half my childhood in foster care. I am the child of a person who was adopted from foster care, and let me just say, adoption isn't all sunshine and roses. But that's not really why I'm here. I'm not here to talk about the details of abortion or what a fetus looks like or when life begins. What we're here to discuss, or what the board was discussing, if I'm not mistaken, was whether or not to remove a policy that is no longer required or necessarily valid in the current context. And so essentially what it does is removes the block between a child going to a trusted adult that works for the school system or is on the school board and saying, hey, I'm pregnant, I don't know what to do, and that adult saying, hey, let's go consult a professional about what we're going to do here without being fined or disciplined. That's really all that's happening here. Nobody's handing out coat hangers so they can go do self-abortions in custodian closets. It's literally about being able to ask a trusted adult for help seeking good information. And so that's it, removing a paragraph from a policy manual and opening the door so kids can seek help when they have nobody else to turn to. So that was it. That's all I have to say. I hope you remove it. I hope there is not a policy lining exactly how you're supposed to handle if somebody comes to you. Probably referring to a social worker that's on staff would be appropriate if there needed to be a policy. But that's it. It's just about removing a paragraph.
Thank you. We have Jacob Kahn, followed by Dean Wojtowicz.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Mostly I would just echo what the last commenter said. I know we had some earlier comments that were kind of like a referendum on whether kids should have abortions, but my understanding also was that the board is just here to decide whether or not educators can educate students. This is something I would share with you, and maybe because I'm closer in age a little bit, a perspective you can appreciate. There's a lot of peer-reviewed research out there that says upwards of 65% of Gen Z folks use TikTok the way we used Google, right? Kids use apps like TikTok to get information. Some of the earlier commenters who took a stance against educating students about a healthcare issue like we have sex ed for, created kind of this false dichotomy in their comments that either the kids are going to get the information from their teachers who might have an agenda, or they're going to go home and have dinner with mom and dad and talk about it. Probably not. Probably what they're going to do is what kids do and go on the internet and try to get their own information. So your responsibility, respectfully, as the board here, is to help decide whether or not kids who have questions, and I say kids, but we're talking about, you know, teenagers and potentially legal adults, right? These folks who have questions about healthcare, about their body, about a situation they or a friend might be going through, about abortion, should be shunted into getting that information online, or if they should be able to go to an educator. And I understand that there is a concern that, you know, maybe there's going to be an agenda and the educators are trying to push the kids to get an abortion. I think everybody on the board knows that's very unfounded, and that by and large the educators in the state of Michigan have children's best interests in mind. So that's the question that you have with this policy is, do you want to shunt kids into going to get information about healthcare and about, you know, legitimate legal practices through relatively unreliable resources that they find online, you know, or even through an app like TikTok? Or do you want to let them have a frank and candid conversation with the same people who we trust to teach them about sex education, about other difficult topics, about other, you know, life-altering decisions that they might have to make? That's what you're weighing, not is abortion good, is abortion bad, junk science about a fetus, whatever. That's just the question you guys have. So again, thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. The last comment I have is from Dean Wojtowicz. Did I pronounce that right?
Good, Wojtowicz.
Wojtowicz. Thank you.
Thank you, and I was not prepared to come up here this evening, but I felt compelled to do so. I've been a resident in Farmington Hills since '89. I've been a property owner for over 30 years. My taxes go to pay everybody's salary here. I don't think any of this discussion should be paid for by my tax dollars. I heard a few of the conversations here today. I think this is a moral issue. And if you bring that into the schools, you're dealing with something that they're not prepared to do. So the last person that talked was about the vote on this, and I will say this, that this language should be taken out of the program. The whole subject should be taken out of the education program. It is a moral issue. It is between someone talked about religion here. It is totally against my religion to promote that type of whatever you want to call it. And somebody else mentioned the other thing. If you continue to let them talk about this in the schools, I agree with this person that said this. Be sure that there's also conversation about how they're ripping out parts out of a person's body. That must be included. Thank you for your time, and I'm very sorry for this subject in front of you. You guys have a very tough job to do. But I will say this, rest assured, I'm going to follow on this vote. And the people who are voting to keep this language in here, rest assured, I want to make sure you guys I'll resign from the board, if not elected off of this board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing, not at this time, unfortunately. But what we will do is we will recess public comment and we will have a 5-minute break to allow our board members to use the bathroom or maybe engage with members of the public should they choose to do so. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 7:05. Move on to our agenda. Thank you all for your patience. We're going to move to items from the secretary. Mrs. Fox?
Yes. The Board of Education, the item from the Secretary, the Board has received communication regarding a note of appreciation for the Assistant Principal Assistant Principal, Constantman, Farmington STEAM Academy. I'm sorry, guys, I just couldn't get it. The board acknowledged communication and responds when appropriate. A list of the correspondence can be found in the board packet, accessible to the Farmington Public School website.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. We will now move to legislative items.
Yes.
Dr. Blau?
Yes, thank you. This is as of October 11th. The governor signed the new literacy and dyslexia screening mandates and the fiscal year 2024-25 supplemental education budget, which increases funding for student mental health and safety, which is a very good thing. Let's see. There is also something here. The State Board of Education passed 2 resolutions recently. The first calls on Congress at the federal level to fully fund the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This is the 50th anniversary of that legislation being passed, which requires us to provide an appropriate and equitable education for all of our students, regardless of their circumstances or cognitive or physical needs. And the federal government in the 1970s, when this was passed, promised to fund the services that we would need to provide by 40%, and that has not happened ever in all of these 50 years. So we are very happy that our State Board of Education is sending this call to Congress to fully fund the work that we do with and for these children. Also, the State Board of Education recognizes the recent passing of the supplemental budget, the extra $125 million in one-time funds to the school aid budget for mental health and school security. And this is a one-time funding of $125 million for these areas. And the State Board of Education is calling on the legislature at the state level and the governor to continue this funding on a recurring basis rather than just this year. And those are the highlights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. We will now move to district updates. Dr. Coffin?
All right, thank you, President Weems. You'll see around the room here the trifold boards. These are products from our Farmington High School IB juniors and seniors who are taking at least one IB science course. One of the requirements of the course is for the students to complete the collaborative science project. It requires 10 hours spent working with a group of students to research and present on their findings on a global issue. Students must work in cross-subject groups, demonstrate strong interpersonal skills while completing the science work. This year, the students selected from the global themes designated by the World Health Organization, such as dementia, women's health, road safety, and malaria. Last week, I had the opportunity to be here while the students presented their research to the community right here in this room. And the students asked that we leave the boards up so that the board and the community would be able to see and enjoy their work. I absolutely enjoyed listening to their presentations, and I learned so much from them. The students of the classes of 2025 and 2026 certainly were impressive, and I absolutely appreciate them sharing their learning with us. On another note, high school administrators met this week to continue conversations around reimagining our high schools. We took time to review information on innovative high schools from across the country through our work with Hanover Research. in order to identify structures in place at these innovative high schools. This includes looking at daily schedules for high school students, CTE opportunities, and working out in the community through work-based learning. In addition, this week, Cabinet and our Cabinet team and Cabinet Plus, which includes our assistant soups and directors and executive directors, we held a virtual meeting with someone from the Hanover Research in order to access the wealth of resources that are now available to school leaders here at Farmington around innovative practices. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Coffin. We will now move to reports from board committees, and we'll start with the Communication Community Engagement Committee meeting. Dr. Blau.
Yes, we had a meeting recently to debrief following our first community dialogue of this school year. The topic was noticing and belonging, which is our central focus instructionally K through 12 this year. And while we felt that the dialogue was a very positive experience for board members, district personnel, and the community members who attended alike, we did engage in some conversation as to what we might want our community dialogues to look like going forward. And we talked about a couple of different possibilities. We could continue along the line where that we have down the path that we've been on so far. Initially, a couple of years ago, our intention was to create opportunities outside of board meetings for interactions between community members and board members, to both build relationships and also discuss issues that are of import to our community members, like cell phone policies, safety in our schools, athletics, reimagining high school, and so forth. So one of the other goals of our community dialogues was to provide an opportunity for additional training and practice for our community members and board members in civil discourse. And we've had Dr. David Giulio from the Civility Project from Oakland University coming to help facilitate our dialogues over the past couple of years to help us learn and develop those skills as a community and as a board. And while that has been a very positive experience and a productive expenditure of our time and energies for community members and board members alike, we had some ideas around possibly changing the format or changing the format from time to time, maybe having some that are more of like a meet and greet where it's less formal and more of an opportunity to just get to know one another as fellow human beings. So we'll revisit this in December, and I encourage my fellow board colleagues to reach out to me or to Ms. Heinrich or Ms. Weems, who are also on our Community Engagement and Communication Committee, with ideas and suggestions that you might have, so that when we discuss it in December, we can incorporate your ideas and suggestions into our planning for our topics and the structure of our community engagement dialogues for the remainder of this school year.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. Any comments, questions before we move on to finance and facilities? Okay, then, Mrs. Heinrich.
Yes, the Finance and Facilities Committee met Tuesday, October 15th. Present was myself, Trustee Smith, and Board President Weems, along with Dr. Coffin and several financial people, Jennifer Kaminsky, John Barth, Kim Pinchak, Allison Robinson, Scott Smith, Jenny Cobal, Jeff Higgins. So the things we talked about, the audit results, Jenny Cobal walked us through the presentation that will be shared at the board meeting. At these committee meetings, we don't make any decisions, we don't make any recommendations, but we do discuss things and ask for clarification and make suggestions of further information that would be helpful to be shared during the presentation. And so those are the types of things that we do at the board meetings, or at the committee meetings. All right, the next thing we talked about was the Farmington Scoreboards and bid pack number 14, based on the feedback from the last board meeting. this was brought to the Finance Committee again and is going to be presented as a discussion item tonight. And so based on the information, we asked really for an overview of all the capital projects in the district. And so we got an extensive report on the 2019, they ranked all the capital priorities for the whole district, for all the buildings district-wide, including facilities and athletics and everything. And so that really gave us a lot of information, and so we asked for more questions that was responded and brought to us. And so the district put together 2 options for the scoreboards, and that will be shared as a discussion item at the meeting tonight. We postponed budget to actual because the meeting took a long time, and we did talk about board stipends, and we found that right now our district is in alignment with the surrounding districts in Oakland County where we have the same board stipend. But we also talked about future need to look at maybe policies as far as reimbursements for conference attendance and things like that. And some of that is in our board operating procedures also, so that's an ongoing discussion. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I know that's coming up as a discussion item, so maybe we'll leave it for that.
And again, we didn't make any decisions and we're not bringing any recommendations. We just asked more questions and asked for more information, which the district was very helpful in providing.
Thank you. We will move to the policy committee. Mr. Walker.
Yes, good evening, everyone. The policy committee met this past week and had several items under discussion. First is that there will be a commitment to publishing all policy-related changes and information to the public the Friday before a scheduled board meeting based on when we have met prior to. And that will also work for the purposes of ease and greater transparency on creating any information that's going to be changed, revised, or deleted, creating a document that can be shown both here at the meeting as well as for those who are online watching the meeting, can be a cutaway so that people can see the information and be reading as we're talking about it going forward. Secondly, our Assistant Superintendent of Talent and Development, Brad Paddock, came before us, provided an update as it related to therapy dogs in the district. We currently have a dog over at Warner Middle School with another over at Forest Elementary coming soon. And as we continue to work with Miller Johnson to get our recommendations, the recommendation coming to us, or they came to us rather, is that this not be written in as a matter of policy, but more specifically as administrative regulation, giving the superintendent greater control over the situation. So this will be reflective as Administrative Regulation 8002, and that making a distinction that service animals are an accommodation under the American Disabilities Act. There are no laws that cover therapy dogs, so that leaves it well within the purview of the district to be able to handle and address accordingly. The memo as such just simply lays out the parameters around therapy dogs being allowed within the district. And this information, I'll read this portion of the memo that is already made available to the public. As you are aware, over the past year, selected dogs have undergone rigorous training and various other preparations have been made for the introduction of therapy dogs in FPS schools, and with Warner Middle School and Forest Elementary School scheduled to be the first in which therapy dogs are introduced into the environment for student benefit. Part of the preparations for the introduction of therapy dogs is the assurance that the parameters and expectations around the introduction of such animals into the learning environment are clear. To that end, the district administration sought a recommendation from Miller Johnson Law Firm, the district's policy service provider for the Board of Education Policy and Administrative Regulations. It is important to note, before proceeding any further, that therapy dogs are distinct from service animals, the latter of which the Board of Education's policies and administrative regulations already address. With regard to non-service animals, which also includes therapy dogs, FPS Board of Education Policy 8002 provides that information in part. Additionally, we had a very robust discussion around board protocols. President Weems brought this information forward with a document that has been presented to all board members for some time now. The discussion topics that were discussed overall were around closed meetings, meeting procedures regarding broadcasts and agendas, consent agenda usage, board member preparation for meetings, board member participation and conduct during meetings, board member participation in discussion, debate, and voting, appropriate behaviors regarding that, discussion of motions, discussion of employee and student issues, hearings, grievances, student-employee discipline, guidelines for public participation at board meetings, board response to persons addressing the board, board conferences, and liaisons as well, needing definitions for that, as well as code of ethics. Recommendations that are being discussed currently through board membership, as well as specifically at the committee level, is that the president should always be on the policy committee, that the treasurer should always be the chair of the finance committee, that the superintendent succession planning committee should be continually consist of the current board president, previous board president, and the vice president as well, and that the board president is primarily in that role the facilitator of conversation that takes place or meeting protocols here. There will be additional discussions around these protocols at a later date, and the full copy of this document is was sent as a separate attachment as well. And that concludes the report from the policy committee.
Thank you. And you know, what is increasingly something I noticed is that our committees are meeting a lot. And I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing behind the scenes as a community engagement committee on communications, the finance and facilities committee and policy committees, especially with all of the work that you're doing, the things that you're doing to research the matters that we're going to be talking about, and ensuring that we're getting the data that we've been asking for. I think that is incredibly helpful. I think that is extremely productive, and I appreciate the research that you're doing in the background and lifting up for us so that we can make informed decisions. Thank you very much. Moving on, we're going to move on to discussion items. We have two tonight. The first thing we're going to go through is the annual audit report, and through our superintendent. You can go ahead and kick us off.
So just want to welcome up Ms. Jennifer Kaminsky, our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, and she will walk through our annual audit report.
Okay, actually, I can't believe it's this time of year again, almost the end of October. It seems like we just had our last audit. But I am going to bring up Jenny Colbo from Plant Moran. She is the senior manager on our audit. So we did have our audit the last 2 weeks of August. And after they left the field, or towards the end of their field work, they determined they had to test an additional federal program. So that kind of threw a wrench in things and delayed things a little bit. But I'm going to bring Jenny up and have her walk through the audit results for our fiscal year end June 30th, 2024. I do want to thank Kim Pinchek. She's the one that spearheads everything on the business side and really takes ownership of this audit from beginning to end. So thank you.
Where's the play button? Oh, he'll do it for me. Okay, thank you. Thank you to the members of the board for the opportunity to present the audit results tonight. As Jennifer mentioned, the purpose of this presentation is to cover the audit with you. I would also like to thank Jennifer Kaminsky and Kim Pinchek and the entire business office for their assistance during the audit. As previously mentioned, we did meet with the Finance Committee last week to cover these results in more depth. So to begin, a few key highlights. We issued an unmodified, or what we refer to as a clean opinion, on the basic financial statements. This means that as a result of our testing, we are not aware of any material adjustments that need to be made to the statements in order for them to be presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We also performed an audit over the federal programs, also referred to as a single audit. As mentioned, we tested the Head Start federal programs as well as the Education Stabilization Fund, also known as the ESSER funds. When testing those programs, we also had no findings or question cost. Additionally, as part of the audit, we look at the capital project expenditures to ensure that they were in accordance with the ballot language and state law, and we also had no findings there. You'll see in a few slides that the federal COVID funding is concluding and was fully spent as of September 30th, 2024. I also wanted to place an emphasis on the annual comprehensive financial report. Not many districts complete this report. There's extra work that goes into it. There's additional statements and statistical information that covers the past 10 years. These statements get submitted to the Associate of School Business Officials, or what we refer to as ASBO, who then issue a Certificate of Excellence. The district has received the Certificate of Excellence for the past 26 years. One deliverable that was provided to the Board of Education was the end of audit letter, which is the required communication to the board. This letter lays out all of our recommendations and audit results, and this slide here just really summarizes those results as well. This letter explains that the financial statements are responsibilities of management, and our responsibility is to place an opinion on those financial statements, which I previously mentioned was that clean or unmodified opinion. As part of this communication, included in this letter, we encountered no difficulties with management during the audit. We had no audit adjustments and no uncorrected adjustments. There were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies. The next few slides here will look at the general fund, the main operating fund of the district. But before we get into that, this is the slide I previously mentioned that shows the district's total COVID-19 relief funding that they've received since the beginning of March of 2020. In total, the district has received $21.2 million of COVID-funded grants, and as of June 30th, 2024, has expended $20.9 million. As I previously mentioned, the remaining amount of these COVID-19 grants were expended by September 30th, 2024. The district has been strategic about this spending. Focusing here on the general fund revenue and other sources, the total revenue in the general fund was approximately $175.9 million, the largest source being state revenue at 58%, followed by the local revenue at 20%. This is where the property tax revenue. Interdistrict and other is 7%, as well as federal revenue at 7%. This slide here really reflects how dependent the district is on the state funding. This slide here is taking the same general fund revenue as the previous slide, but focusing on what the foundation allowance provides. 59% of the revenue of the foundation allowance is shown in orange. That is your unrestricted state aid and property taxes. 27% is the state and local in teal, so this now is where your state categoricals are included. So if you were to compare this slide to the previous slide, you'll see the shift from local to the foundation allowance. And if you were to compare this slide to last year, you would see that there was a shift in percentages from the foundation allowance to the other state and local due to the additional state categorical revenue received. This state categorical revenue can only be spent on specific purposes. Here we're looking at the history of the per pupil funding for the district. The 2024 foundation allowance increased to $11,484 per pupil. In order to collect this foundation allowance, this comes from the state as well as the operating millage. This is an increase from the prior year of approximately $458. As you can see here with the dotted line going across, the district recovered from the district's 2009 cuts just a few years ago. And it's the first time in several years that there's been consecutive years where there's been an increase in the foundation allowance. This slide here is a history of the district's per pupil funding and comparing it to inflation. So the top line is the rate of inflation, and the bottom line is the per pupil foundation funding. The large difference shown in this slide shows that the district has not kept pace with inflation on a per pupil basis, and the difference continues to grow. So speaking in dollars on this slide, the current year comparison on a per pupil basis to inflation is approximately $3,700 per pupil. And if you were to look at this slide on a cumulative basis, the funding gap between the pace of inflation and the per pupil foundation allowance is close to $34.1 million. The slide here is looking at the blended student population over the last several years. It shows the history of the decline of the district, which has been seen throughout the state and within the county. The district has weathered this drop and stabilized and has seen the student population level off and even increase 71 students or 9,090 pupils for the year. This is the second year in a row where there has been an increase of students at the district. Next few slides is going to look at the general fund expenditures. The total general fund expenditures were $173.6 million, and this slide here is shown by function, or how these expenditures are being allocated. As expected in a learning organization, the majority of the expenditures are allocated to instruction. Instruction makes up approximately 58% of the general fund expenditures, followed by support services at 38%. This slide here is taking those same general fund expenditures and showing them by object, or where those dollars are being spent. As expected, in an organization of people, the largest component of expenditures is salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits, which also includes your health care and retirement costs, comprise 83% of the total expenditures. This is comparable to last year and what we see through many districts throughout the state. The majority of school districts' funds, between 80%, is spent on people. The purchase services also shown here is also where the substitute teachers are included, so there are even more dollars being spent on the people of the district. Now breaking down the salaries and benefits expense that was discussed on the previous slide. Salaries is the largest portion of this $143.4 million. It is 58% of the total salaries and benefits. 21% represents the FICA and retirement, 11% represents insurance, and 10% is your retirement UAAL. That is the amount that is determined by the state that they pay right to the district, that you have to turn around and pay right back into the retirement system. Taking a closer look at the retirement expense of the district, in 2024, retirement expense was $39.4 million, or for every dollar that was spent on salaries, 47 cents goes into the MIPSR's retirement system. So every dollar of payroll costs the district $1.47. As you can see here, there's been a significant increase over the past several years. Looking at the district's general fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, in total, this was 22.65%. However, there is 9% of fund balance that is committed or assigned for other purposes. So essentially, that is money that is already spoken for. So the district's unassigned fund balance is 13.61%. When comparing it to the state average is as of June 30th, 2023, this was 21.86%. The district's fund balance equates to being able to operate for 26 days. Fund balance is important for many different reasons. It minimizes the need to be able to borrow cash due to cash flow needs. The district's average monthly payroll is $11.1 million. So if there was a cash shortfall, you would want to be able to have fund balance to be able to make that payroll. MSBO's recommendation is 15%. GFOA's recommendation is 16 to 17%. And the district's board-approved fund balance policy is 10 to 15%. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and I would open it for any questions.
Ms. Smith? It's not a question. It's just thank you. Thank you for all the work that you put into this. the transparency, not only to the board, but to the community. Thank you for all the hard work that you and your team put into this. Thank you.
I would echo that. Thank you to the business team. Thank you to Plant Moran as well. I know that the finance team had the benefit of receiving this and reviewing this presentation ahead of time. At that time, I mentioned that I was interested in understanding how the district spent its $21 million in COVID and related funding. I'd love to see that as part of our budget going forward so that we'll understand where we're starting from and what the differences were. I know that the district was extremely strategic in using those one-time funding resources for one-time things so that we're not going to be as impacted in our next year's budget, but I would like to have that discussion as part of the budget cycle. So thank you for coming here today and walking us through that.
Thank you.
All right, we can now move on to our next discussion item, and that is on the FPS scoreboards in bid packet number 14. We have been through this presentation already, so I'm hoping that we can discuss any updates or changes since the last time we reviewed as opposed to the entire presentation.
Yes, so thank you to Jennifer Kaminsky, Allison Robinson, and Scott Smith for being back up here on week 2. Just kind of to make sure everybody's on the same page, at the last board meeting, as President Weems just mentioned, the district did present information on bid pack 14 with the focus on discussing the opportunity to install upgraded video scoreboards on both main high school fields. During that discussion, the Board of Education shared several questions with the district for us to check into. Most recently, as you heard from Ms. Heinrich during the finance facility meeting just last week, many of these questions were addressed, including the planning process for projects across the district, how these projects are prioritized, as well as what are some other unmet needs that still may be addressed. In addition, the board discussed where STEM and STEM-related activities fell in the planning stages, both short-term and long-term. Finally, the board also was interested in potential revenue that may be available through rentals for the main and auxiliary fields with the recommended upgrades. Tonight, in light of this discussion from the board's last meeting, we'll be sharing information on a second option that came directly from the questions and from the board, for the board to also consider. We believe that the scoreboards do need to be updated in our main fields, and we also believe that the lighting upgrades on the main fields and the auxiliary fields will not only support safety and security, as we had talked about, as we also heard earlier, offer more options for practice times, and also increase potential revenue. The board asked us to estimate what that might be. Currently, we have revenue in the amount of about $10,000 a year in rental income, but we believe with both fields and the additional lighting, that could easily go up to about $50,000 each year for the district. The difference between the options is just under about $500,000. If the second option is selected, the savings would be allocated and prioritized to projects that include additional updates to our athletic fields as well as other prioritized area. Another point of consideration for the board is that as we begin to wrap up the 2020 bond, because of interest earnings as well as savings from past bond projects, we project to have an additional $2.2 million that will also be available to continue to work on these prioritized projects, which includes facilities need as well as our priorities around STEM and STEM-related spaces. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context as we turn it over to them as they prepare or present the second option, as well as a review of the first.
Okay, so just to review what bid pack 14 includes. So this is the high school scoreboards and stadium lighting improvements at Farmington High School and North Farmington. So the original scope of the project was replacement of the existing scoreboards at both main fields with video scoreboards and traditional boards on the aux fields. We would replace the existing stadium lighting and then add lighting on the auxiliary fields. High school baseball and softball and middle school scoreboards would be bid out as alternates to be considered if there were enough funds to pay for those projects. Bid awards were anticipated in December 2024, with the construction timeline being in the summer of 2025. So just real quick. So that was the first option that was presented at the October 8th board meeting, was with the video boards and sound systems. So based on the feedback and the questions that the board had, we did come up with a separate option for the board to consider. So again, option one is what we presented last week. It is to approve video scoreboards with a sound system for both high schools, put new scoreboards on the auxiliary fields at both high schools, and then consider baseball and softball scoreboards as alternate number one when we go out to bid on bid pack 14, and then consider scoreboards at East Power and Warner as alternate number two. Again, approximate total $934,200. So option two is the traditional scoreboard with a sound system. So essentially eliminating the video scoreboard piece. So the boards would look very similar to the renderings that we shared with you at the last board meeting. However, they would not contain the video board. Also, new scoreboards on the auxiliary fields as we discussed. So that approximate cost is about $362,000 versus $818,000 for those boards. We would then add baseball and softball scoreboards at both high schools into the project, so not to be considered as an alternate. We would move forward with those. And the same thing for the scoreboards at East Power and Warner Middle Schools. So the total for option number two is approximately $478,200. So we put in a not to exceed of $495,000. And again, just to talk about the, both options would include or would assume that we'll be moving forward with those lighting improvements on the main fields and the auxiliary fields. And that bid pack 14 includes both the installation and any necessary electrical improvements that need to be considered as part of these projects. So we can take any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from board members? So I want to thank you for providing this information. Today, as an action item, we have an opportunity to move on either option one or two. And so I think before making one of those options, it might make sense for us as a board to have some discussion on this topic to get a sense for whether the board is in support of either option one or two or some new proposal. Mrs. Heinrich, did you have a comment?
No, I was just asking if we're going to have a discussion. So, yes, I would like to have a robust discussion.
Yes.
There's been a lot of comments, there's a lot of pluses and minuses, and opinions either way, so.
So from what I've heard from our previous discussion and what I'm hearing today, I don't get the sense based off of the discussions in our last meeting and at the most recent Finance and Facilities Committee meeting that there's any question about the need to update, period. We need an update. So that is not a question. I got the sense also from the board and from the latest Finance and Facilities Committee meeting that generally there is support for improved lighting for our facilities. So there's no question there. So it feels like to me that we are in a place where we're either supportive of option one or two and not something else. I'm seeing shaking of the heads from our board members. So then it comes down to about $439,000 difference in option 1 and option 2. What was a concern for me, and I'm just speaking for myself here because I don't hear discussion, but I'm trying to stimulate some, is I'm the most conservative person probably on the board when it comes to finances. You guys know that about me, and I won't pretend something otherwise. I was very interested in understanding what the benefits were associated with this investment. Clearly, there are some intangibles related to feel, look, and I am normally not a person who is interested in much of that, in keeping up with Joneses and so forth and so on. Except, I recently had the experience of attending some games. And I think because of this discussion, I'm noticing a lot. And over the past several years, I've actually been to lots of football games, away games, track meets, and so forth and so on. And I hear it from our students, and I hear it from other parents, that our facilities are not at the same quality level. That is a statement of fact, and I don't believe in an opinion at all. It's noticeable, and I'm beginning to get to the point personally where I am, if we want to be a premier school district, that's going to take some investment. And so now I personally am a little bit more open to that investment, particularly since there is benefit to not just the football team, but also the track team. There's benefit to the band. There's benefit to spectators of the sport. There is also benefit to TV10, who can benefit from a curriculum perspective. That was also very appealing to me. I don't want our students to be embarrassed by our facilities. We have a list in our packet of about 20+ school districts who have currently moved into this video screen. And again, I'm not, purporting that we need to keep up with the Joneses, but I've noticed a difference in the quality of the system, how much better you can hear with the new system and see. And I think that would be a benefit for some of our students. I'm also hearing from our athletics department, we heard from many of them today, that we are losing students in the transition from middle school, junior high school to high school. And some of it has to do with athletics. I am a huge fan of extracurricular activities in addition to academic focus because I know personally that is part of the reason why kids have a joy in going to school. It's things like band and theater and athletics and so forth and so on. I also asked the district to help quantify what earning potential there might be as a result of having these scoreboards. And in your package, you can see that there's an estimate based off of what we currently have and what could be incremental revenue of about $50,000 a year. And that might be renting out our facilities now because we have the additional lighting and the scoreboards. We're not able to rent them out now. Doing fundraiser activities like movie nights and so forth and so on. And so now my thought is, okay, we can recover that investment in about 9 years, in addition to all of the other intangible benefits. So for me, I'm open more and considering more the first option. I'll stop and see if that stimulated any additional thoughts or reactions. I am perfectly happy to hear opinions that differ from my own. Mr. Walker.
I just want to get a little more clarification, please, and I apologize for any repetition, around the difference, what the difference could actually be spent on, that roughly $500,000 difference. And for full transparency from my position, I am thinking about our STEM-related facilities and our STEM-related initiatives from a facility perspective. How much of any of that money could be spent in that direction or under those circumstances? That's where I still need just a bit more clarity around.
If I might interject,
Please.
I mean, I think the real answer is all of it.
Okay.
I don't want to pretend that that's something different, However, what the district did do was analyze for us what our current known needs are in athletics.
But here's where my question was, because if I remember from our last meeting, for example, we could not use that money to build out a facility or create a facility as an add-on to our building. Am I correct in that?
Well, we could add on to a facility, however, I'm not sure we would have enough money to do that.
Okay.
We could not build a brand-new structure.
Okay.
That would be, prohibited.
That's the
under the
clarification
bond,
that I needed. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Dr. Turner, and then Mrs. Heinrich, and then Dr. Blau.
Thank you. If I understood correctly, Dr. Coffey, you indicated that even with the expenditures in the bond as it is, there'll be about $2.5 million in excess?
Yeah, it's right now 2.2, but it could be up to 2.5.
Okay. That could be dedicated toward other needs
Correct.
that we've heard about. And if I'm correct, our general fund budget is about $174 million, thereabouts. And if I saw the documents properly, we spend about 1% on athletics currently today, which is about $2.3 million. And in terms of the upkeep of the new scoreboard, should we go that way and vote on there, I can assume that this general fund percentage would not begin to escalate beyond what its current layout is presently, or is that a false assumption?
I would say that's pretty accurate. What would cause the cost to increase, obviously, are wages and benefits.
Sure.
That's the majority of what is spent on athletics right now as part of that $2.3 million is coaching. We do obviously have supplies and we have transportation costs, but the video scoreboards have a 5-year parts, 5-year labor, I believe, warranty on them. The video boards do. And similar on the traditional boards for an additional cost, which we've included in that option, number 2.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, I'm looking at both of our options, and I just, the stumbling point for me is that $500,000 and the alternate 1 and alternate 2. It's like we can do so much more and still have an additional $500,000. It can't be used for new spaces, but it can be used for renovations and additional spaces. I hear the arguments. We want to attract students to our district, and we're high school. We're not college. And I just have had discussions, what do athletes look for? What really makes our athletes better? It's the coaches. It's the program. Our athletes look for our program. Do we have a winning record? Do we have stability in the coaching staff? Because, when my daughters played athletics, we kind of had changes in coaches, and that really affects the program when you change coaches. And so those are the types of things that attracts athletes. Practice space. And I think my other stumbling block with this is we really, we don't have enough practice space. If we were talking about, and I know you can't build a field house with $500,000, it's going to take a lot more. But I'm looking at long-term needs also, and I'm looking at saying to our community, we need to go out and we need to ask you for more money. Our bond money is done, and we're going to ask for additional funding. And so what do we need the funding for? Will we have a video scoreboards? I think that's where we're going. I'm just not convinced that based on wants and needs, it's a big enough need right now. Scott had mentioned that when we do upgrade the scoreboards, that we could put in the foundations and the footings that would lead to a transition to video boards down in the future. And we look at, and what's the age of the boards now? I mean, anything that you put in requires maintenance. One of the reasons we have to replace the boards is because of the maintenance. And traditional boards are cheaper maintenance. We only have a 5-year warranty on the video boards, and anything that goes wrong, it's like with the new cars, they're more expensive to repair. And so those are going to be more expensive to repair. So down the line, so it's just, and I can understand the arguments for both of them. And I want to keep our students in the district, and I want our students to be involved in athletics, and I think they can, but I think, having the strong coaches, having the adequate practice facilities, I think we can provide all those things and prepare for maybe down the road a video scoreboard, and I'm just not convinced that it's a need at this time with all the other needs. And I want to share one other thing too, because our buildings are aging buildings, and Dr. Coffin shared with the board that, we make these improvements, but having the money budgeted for ongoing maintenance is something that we really need to have discussions about and we need to look into. And one of the things that I was impressed at when I went to the IB evaluation, and we had the evaluators come in, and they had the student-led tour of Farmington High School, and they were complimenting us on the facility. And they were saying, oh, this is a beautiful facility, it's a wonderful facility, it's not. And some of the things we've said is, our facilities aren't up to speed or whatever. So I think we're doing a good job of maintaining our facilities, and I think that the tracks that we have, the turf and the track around it, and the lighting, absolutely. We definitely need the lighting, and adding those sound systems to the auxiliary field. I think those are all going to, the lighting is going to provide more practice space and more practice time, and that's going to benefit our athletes as far as getting the winning records. And I asked parents, I said, when you look at the scoreboard, what do you look for? And they said that we're winning. So they're looking at the score. And all those other things are additional benefits that I think we'll get to eventually, but right now at this time, I'm just not convinced this is the time for it.
Thank you. Dr. Blau and then Mr. Walker. Did you have a comment?
I concur with all of what you just shared, Ms. Heinrich, around that. While that is ultimately the direction we will probably go, I just can't justify $500,000 when what we really need is the score. I understand we need to update, but especially when there are other programs in this district who have been waiting for over a decade for attention. And $500,000 might not be enough for what the final solution will be for, say, for our STEM facility and our robotics teams. But I made a mistake the last time I spoke about this. I had said 90% of the students that we have in our high school programs who are involved in our high school robotics program go on to careers in this field. It's actually 96%. So when you think about the monies that we invest, the dollars we invest in our STEM equipment and our STEM facilities, these have a direct correlation to 96% of those students' ultimate career path and all of their applications to CTE programs and to colleges and so forth. Athletics are very important. I was involved in high school athletics. My sons were involved in high school athletics. I value them greatly. And there are students who are not athletes who are involved in other things, and there are students who are involved in both robotics and athletics, like our friend Henry Francis, who is involved in both. But I just cannot, in good conscience, vote in favor of spending an extra $500,000 on video scoreboards when we haven't made any kind of financial commitment, real financial commitment to the robotics, high school robotics facility.
Thank you. Mr. Walker.
I want to go back to 1% of our current general fund is spent towards athletics, correct? And I also want to ask the question of the, after this portion, however it's determined and spent, we said that we have left over roughly $2.5 million?
2.2 to
2.2 million. Again, what is that money allowed to be used for? Because if we could take that 2.2 and point it in the direction of STEM, okay, and have a a commitment and a plan for that, then we can have a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned. And that's the small part of this piece that I'm still, in what I read and what I'm hearing, that I'm not getting. Because just because we don't spend it, if we still don't have a plan for the other 500 that would be left over, we're still in this nebulous situation of them asking and we not providing any kind of information around it. And $2.2 million towards STEM goes a lot further than $500,000 towards the video scoreboards. And it's difficult for me to articulate, but while I know $500,000 sounds like a lot for the video components of a scoreboard, yes, it does. But if you decide to do this later on down the road, it's going to be a lot more when you decide to make that advancement as well. Electronics don't diminish in cost, they increase in cost, and the sophistication level and infrastructure that goes along with it also increases with that as well. And so I appreciate the timeliness of this, and I also appreciate, without me sounding like I'm being overly, I can't think of the word I'm trying to use in this moment, but I'm not trying to be inconsiderate to previous administrations and direction, that STEM has been overlooked to this particular point, and we have to balance this out accordingly. I just need to have a better understanding of what can we do, or can we get a commitment to the degree that the bond dollars allow, that 2.2 would go toward some benefit for the STEM in terms of either facility or whatever it is that they need to have, and ancillary programs along with that. I need some information around that. That's the piece of the puzzle that's missing.
If we could pause, and Mrs. Fox, I know you have a question as well, but I would really like to dig into Mr. Walker's question, because I feel like I'm hearing from the board that we're all interested in making sure that other needs are met. That is the desire of the board. And so what was shared with us was an analysis of current needs and how those things were going to be covered with remaining bond dollars. We're also aware that there are plans being developed, temporary plans, short-term plans, and long-term plans for STEM. And I feel like personally, I was initially hijacking my decision on this for that, and I'm not sure that has to happen. I wonder if there's an and as opposed to an or. So can you help us understand what's needed for STEAM, where we are, and how we're planning on addressing those needs? And then we're going to move to Mrs. Fox and then Mrs. Smith.
So we do, so currently we don't have a standalone facility for our FIRST robotics teams to practice. They make use of our current, like at one of our high schools right now, and do that, and we know that that's less than ideal. However, we do have other spaces within the district that we are looking at, and as Ms. Kaminsky said, we can use bond dollars to make improvements so that can be a space, that could be a place for that to actually work for them. We also have the opportunity, if we wanted to purchase a building off-site. And so that's probably, $1.2, $1.5 million.
But we couldn't use bond dollars for that? To purchase?
Not for the purchase of the building, but if we did renovations to the building,
So that would come out of general fund as a support for STEM and STEM-related activities. We do have, Jennifer, you might have to correct me, the amount of money we have in our tech bond that we are now dedicating to STEM, as far as from the technology side, K-12. So that was
on the
1 million?
Yeah, I think it's $1 million.
So we have $1 million that is earmarked to go towards STEM and STEM-related experiences, K-12, because we have not invested in the FIRST robotics as an example. That's only one piece of it. Just want to be like, we do invest in STEM and STEM-related. Our CTE programs, as a matter of fact, is a significant investment in STEM careers. So I don't know if that helps to give you some parameters. The other piece is, while we're talking about 2.2 million or 2.2 million plus the 400,000 or 500,000, we still have needs in athletics that are not met either. So we have the STEM, but we also have some fields that need to be updated that just were not done as part of the 2019. So regardless of where we land, we are going to have to prioritize and do what we can with the money that's left over. We just know the priorities of the board include the STEM and STEM-related activities, as well as, making sure that our athletic fields are up to par and comparable to those that we visit in other districts.
Thank you, Dr. Coffin. Mrs. Fox, and then Mrs. Smith, and then Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about what we're thinking about doing. First of all, I would love to have video and all the fun stuff and what have you. But when you just mentioned not too long ago about the warranty is only 5 years, what do we do from year 6 going on? How much money will that cost us to fix those if the warranty is not, if that's over? What are we going to do? I mean, what kind of money we have to pay in order to get them back for the 6th, 7th, 8th year?
I'm not sure whether you guys have an answer to that, but what I think, Mrs. Fox, is that there would be a maintenance issue for either the scoreboard version or the non-scoreboard version.
Yeah.
That warranty applies to both option 1 and 2. But to your point, the option 1 might be more expensive if something happened with the video equipment.
That's my concern. Are we going to, have money set aside for a lot of money that we may have to set aside? And and we have other things that we have to do within our buildings.
Does anybody want to respond to that one?
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the?
I think the question is, there was a question with respect to the warranty and how the district would be able to address any breakage or, if something happens beyond the warranty period, where in the budget that would fall. And do we think it would be significantly more expensive with the option 1 than 2?
Yes. Thank you.
I mean, obviously, we would, have to allocate money out of the general fund to repair that in years 6 and beyond. What that is, I don't really know what that cost would be.
And that's not inconsistent with what we do for other things that we could see as being a larger cost. We do set aside funds to be able to support that.
We did have to spend, I'm not sure how much it was, on about $8,000 last year to repair North Farmington scoreboard with the lighting. Many of the lights were out. So those boards are getting old. They're probably 20 years old, probably when we did our outdoor facilities. So it is time to replace them. It's just, what the board wants to choose to put in place with these. But as with anything, you're going to have maintenance costs and repair costs. I think we did find out, though, there's a protective covering on the video boards. Mr. Walker, you had asked about what if somebody threw something at it. So there is, kind of some protection to offset that.
So I'm going to recommend that we hear from Mrs. Smith and then from Mrs. Heinrich, and then maybe we have some thoughts, and we'll entertain a motion when we get to that point, because we can always have further discussion. Mrs. Smith?
I want to piggyback off of Ms. Kaminsky. I attend the games, football games, all of them. And it's embarrassing to have your team's on the field, and all of a sudden, you can't get a score, or you don't have any lights. So these people are coming to Farmington Hills for a game, either at North or at Farmington. It's just like when we talked about the roof. with it leaking, trucks with sunroofs that were not built to be sunroofs. So now we've got students that are having games that you may not get a score, or you cannot hear the announcer. We could probably have our, what do you call it, marching band come in and have, competitions, but we can't. You just heard Mr. Steele. I had 2 daughters that went through Farmington. And it was hard for them to walk on a field without twisting an ankle because they couldn't see. Kids, got flashlights on their phones or walking around through the parking lot. But then we also have the problem that Mr. Francis brings to us as well, as far as the STEM and the STEAM. They're both a need. They are both a priority. You know why? Because it is our students. These are our kids. It's not like we're asking for anybody to do anything other than help our kids. This will be a project that can help bring our elementary schools in for movie night. Instead of parents taking them over the summer to a drive-in, you have it right here. We could use these facilities to help our students. So I am in agreement that this is a need, not only for our sports, but also for Mr. Francis out there. So I think that we need to move forward, have some discussion with the board. And by the way, my kids ain't been out of school that long, so it's not like it's been bedrock. It's not no 40 years or whatever. So at the end of the day, let's do this and let's get this taken care of. Let's make sure our students are safe, because it's a safety issue too. And it's also embarrassing when you get a touchdown and you don't know you had a touchdown. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, I picked up on that, I'm a numbers person, so I picked up on that 2.2 million. We're getting towards the end of our bond money, and I'm looking at this 219 report that was put out with the 10-year summary. And so it was broken down to critical need, years 1 to 3, deferred maintenance, years 4 to 6. We're in years 4 to 6 right now. And then years 7 to 10, so it's projected out. So the bottom line for all of our buildings from years 7 to 10 is $45,367,790. And so that 2.2 million is just a drop in the bucket towards the 7 to 10 year in this extensive 300-page document that was shared with us as far as the needs of all the buildings. And so we're going to have to ask our community for more money to meet these needs. And so I'm just trying to keep a balance on perspective on how, and it's, not can we spend the money, it's how we choose to spend the money. And are we being, are we spending it with fidelity at this time?
Thank you for that, Mrs. Heinrich. So we're going to close discussion on this. There is another opportunity to have some discussion when we get to action items. Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you so much for doing all of the work and getting us all of the analysis that we asked for so that we can make an informed decision. At this time, we will move to our second public comment. I have one card from Mr. Henry Francis. If there are any other persons who'd like to make public comment, please fill out a card and leave it in the box right next to Ms. Ramona Mayberry.
Ms. Weems? President Weems?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are people in the audience allowed to make another comment regarding this?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, just give me a minute.
Okay.
I have an agenda that was printed. Does anyone else see other agenda items that I missed?
No.
No?
No discussion. To discuss.
Okay, yeah, I'm just seeing. And I'm on here too. I see it. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Francis, we're good. You can start. Thank you for coming.
Well, I would like to actually start off by thanking Dr. Turner for being generous enough to give me this lovely rose tonight. I appreciate it, and I really appreciate the message behind it as well. So thank you. Getting to what I'm actually mainly at this meeting for is the bond work and the purchasing of scoreboards. I'm not going to stand up here and say that we shouldn't pay money for new scoreboards and that athletics doesn't deserve to have their facilities improved. I think it's very important. I'm an athlete. I run cross country. I get it. But at the same time, I think spending, I believe it was upwards of $800,000 on video scoreboards is an unnecessary expense for the district, especially with our current state. And, I could talk all day about the robotics facility, but I mean, even just for our athletics, I don't believe need to have video scoreboards. I know it was mentioned that there are surrounding districts that have those video scoreboards, but there are very few that are in the Oakland County school system that we would be up against, and none of these programs that would benefit from the purchase of new scoreboards have been in the same shoes as I have and as the robotics team has with our own facilities. We obviously are confined by space, but if we ever want to test something, if we ever want to make sure our robot works, we have to pack everything up and go 30 minutes to Livonia Public Schools, where they do have a STEM facility, and they're generous enough to let us in there. But for how long are they generous enough, and how often can we sustain that? And it's a huge issue that we have to do that, especially since there's just these floating rumors of discussions about improvements to a STEM facility or adding a STEM facility, but I haven't bared witness to any of that actual concrete evidence. I know my family members have not, and it's very hard to have hope when it's not apparent to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Melissa Francis, and then we have Kaylee Francis.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Coffin. Wasn't, once again, planning to speak tonight, but here we are. Thank you, first of all, for board members for considering robotics. This is the first time we've even been at the table and considered in the last, like I said, I've been here 10 years. The team itself, I'm going to be that person right now. The team itself has been around for 15 years. It's our 15-year anniversary. In fact, our graphics team is working on some merch, so you might want to get in on that. That's also, consequently, the average lifespan of a FIRST robotics team for high school. So we're hoping to make it. As Dr. Blau mentioned earlier, 96% of our kids go pro in STEM or STEAM-related fields. So we've got a survey out to our alumni. It gets a little harder every year to reach some of them. Phone numbers change, email addresses change, so we're doing our best on that. But our last survey in the last couple of years has yielded those results. I wanted to also mention another statistic, that's 20%. 20% of our kids from our attendees from last year's 1832 designated special education camp, and I've got flyers because we're about to do it again. 20% of the kids that attended the camp last year, and not all were eligible, some were middle school, but 20% of the students who are in high school who attended the camp went on to join our team successfully. They have returned this year. An additional student from their class joined them after he heard of the success, and he's doing great back in our shop. We have not even had the camp yet, so we've got about 83 kids on our roster thus far. I don't know that they'll all make it through the entire process, but that's how many we've got, and we haven't even had our FAPN camp, which those kids will be too young to join, our 1832 camp, where we will have some kids eligible, and we'll open it up also to Visions. We're doing a camp for them as well this year. So that's what we've got going on. I also want to point out another statistic. I know 1% of budget goes to athletics. Our intention was never to pit robotics versus athletics, but please note that 0% goes to robotics right now. So we'd love to have, a half of what they're getting. And it was stated earlier that sports is the greatest investment a district can make. I'd argue that inclusiveness is what's really keeping kids here, and that's what we offer. Like I said, we've got camps. We welcome literally everyone who is of the correct age range. This year, our Power Middle School turned away 45 kids because of lack of space, resources, and coaching. And those of you who are willing to come out to the shop, we can show you how many people are in that building, and you'll see why we had to turn those kids away. So happy to share these flyers with you all. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Kaylee Francis, followed by Elizabeth, can you help me? Panky. I thought it was Panky. I didn't want to mess it up. I apologize. Kaylee Francis, followed by Elizabeth Panky, and then that is the last card I have if anyone is interested.
Okay, good evening, board. So I came here, originally I was in my PJs before I was here, and my family texted me that a former teacher of mine actually came in today and said that the greatest return on investment in this district is athletics. I have to disagree with my former teacher. So I'm 24 years old. I just turned 24 a couple weeks ago. I was born and raised in Farmington. I went to Alameda, Longacre, Power, then East due to some changes in the schooling, and then Farmington eventually. I was a student athlete at Farmington. I played in 3 soccer teams, 2 club teams, and 1 high school team. So I played for the district. I was very involved. I also joined the robotics team my freshman year. I am the return on investment. I have bought a house in this district at 23 years old. I am now 24. I have bought a house in this district. I am mentoring my robotics students down at the high school. The robotics students are not just one high school. It is all high schools. We are open to Farmington. We are open to North Farmington. Though we don't really get a turnout from them, we are open to Central Farmington or Farmington Central. We are an all-inclusive team. And since I have been through the schools, again, I joined robotics my freshman year of high school, which was in 2014, so 10 years ago now. We've actually lost space. We had a portable trailer behind Farmington High School, which is where the robotics team meets for all 3 high schools. And that portable trailer had to be burned to the ground because it had black mold and it was not being properly maintained. That was burnt to the ground in, I believe, 2015 or very early 2016. So we've actually lost space in the time that I have been, again, through high school to now. And the team isn't getting smaller. It's just simply not. In fact, the team when I first joined was probably around 50 people. Again, as my mom and my brother have alluded to, my mom has said that there's 86 currently registered to the team, and that number floats around. People are in and out throughout the year. It's preseason now, it's not yet the season. But it's not just Farmington and North Farmington and Farmington Central in these STEM facilities. In fact, we're broken up into 4 classrooms. It's the middle school teams, it's the elementary school teams, it's literally anyone else who wants to be in our workspace, because we are open to all, and that includes other robotics teams. Every now and again, we do invite them to come in and work with us, because first, the robotics program that the Hackbots are a part of is about inclusivity and collaboration. There's been 0 investment in space. There's been 0 investment in the robotics team. There's been 0 investment for over 10 years. In fact, it was the 15th anniversary. There's been 0 investment. I am the return on investment. I want to see that.
Thank you. Next, Elizabeth Pankey.
Good evening, board members. I'm Elizabeth Pankey, and I am the current baseball backer president for our group at Farmington High School. I'm here to talk about scoreboards. I'm very excited, and I hope that you'll consider the non-video option as much as I would like to see it in the future. I've been to games that have had it. Unless you have a highly trained person to run it, you're not getting anything from that video scoreboard that you're not seeing on the field already. And our baseball fields really could use a new one. As my dad calls it, it's only readable in Braille because you can't see it from where it is, where we sit. The lights just aren't bright enough anymore. I really, like Mr. Cahill said, that when you come to our facilities and you see our fields at the football stadium and the tracks and stuff like that, they're great quality, but our other areas are lacking. And one of those areas are for softball and baseball fields. And we really could use, our parents do a lot of work. We are primary maintenance people for those. So we do the continual maintenance of the mounds and the stuff like that. But when it comes to the lighting, we can't really do anything more for the lights for the scoreboards. So we just really consider that you equitably give that money around to all the sports instead of just keeping it improving the football field. I know they're their primary money bringer in, but all sports are important. So that's why I just ran up here and had to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Any further public comment? Seeing none, we are going to close the public comment section. I will ask, though, at a future meeting, we add an agenda topic sometime in the future to talk about our investments in STEM and STEAM. So let's make sure that that is a future agenda topic. Okay, we're going to move now into action items. The first action item is related to policy. I'm going to ask that we separate the action item related to policy number 4005 because I expect that there may be a need to have some further discussion on that one. So if we could entertain a motion to adopt policies 3005, 4005, the first policy, and 8009, I think that would be most appropriate.
2010.
8,010.
Oh, is it 8010? It says 8009 on my thing.
8,010.
Oh, sorry, 8010. Thank you for that clarification. So, okay.
Support.
I was not making the motion.
She said so moved.
I said we would entertain them. Oh, who said so moved?
Mr. Walker.
I missed it.
I mean,
I'll make the motion.
Dr. Turner did.
Okay, I move that we separate and vote on, at this time, policies 3005, policy 4005, the first of the two listed, and policy 8010 as a collective,
As presented.
as presented.
Second.
There is a motion to approve policy number 3005 on the selection of media center library materials. Section 4005, other matters of employment that relate to political activities. And 8010 related to digital communications as presented. Motion made by Mr. Walker, supported by Dr. Turner. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Fox, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Support? Yes.
Ms. Heindrich?
Yes.
Dr. Blog?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Myself, Mabel Fox, yes. And President Terry Weems.
Yes. Thank you. That motion passes. Is there a motion for the next item, which is 4005, related to prohibited items? Mr. Turner?
I move that the Board of Education adopt the Policy Committee's recommendations as noted in the comments section of Miller Johnson's Policies Manuals, updated June 2024, for the following policy as presented. 4005, prohibition of referral or assistance.
Support.
There is a motion made by Dr. Turner, supported by Mrs. Smith, to make updates to policy 4005. To be clear, 4005 policy used to read, all district employees, board members, and school officials must provide instruction in sex education in strict compliance with MCL 380 of the revised school code. In addition, all district employees, board members, and public officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. Pursuant to state law, district personnel found to be in violation of this policy will be assessed a fine by the district of no less than 3% of his or her annual compensation. The district will refund the state school aid fund in an amount equal to any fines applied to or collected from district personnel under this policy. The revised policy being recommended or moved on is a policy that strikes the first sentence, that retains the sentence, all district employees, board members, and school officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining abortion, strikes the rest of the policy statement, but adds an exception for members of the district or board members who have a student or is a legal, who is a parent or legal guardian of that student. That is the motion that is currently on the table, that has been moved by Dr. Turner and supported by Mrs. Smith, so that we all understand. Is there any discussion?
I thought that we were considering eliminating all of it because the law no longer requires that we have it. So I wanted to explore that option with my colleague.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. So it is you'd like to explore a different motion which strikes it all together?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to read the policy that is being proposed this evening in its entirety, if it pleases the board.
Yes, thank you.
District employees, board members, and school officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. This policy does not apply to employees, board members, or school officials who are parents or legal guardians of that student. So my question is, and I said policies all day for 30 years, and I read extensively and intentionally. The policy states that district employees, board members, and school officials are prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. That's very loose language as I read it. There's no prohibition for me having a discussion with a student who asked me a question. It specifically dictates that I cannot refer a student for an abortion. I cannot assist a student in obtaining an abortion. And I'm not looking for a scapegoat. What I'm stating is what I'm hearing from our public, prohibitions that they think are in place with this policy, I don't recognize. I don't see them. So I'm not really sure what this policy does as it relates to some of the concerns that I heard expressed on both sides of the aisle. It's been properly moved, it's been properly seconded, and it's here for discussion to be considered. I did hear Dr. Blau in terms of an alternative proposal as it relates to this policy, but I'm interested on the remaining discussion points.
Thank you. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, I'm just, initially when it was presented last week, it was presented to strike the whole policy, but then it was clarified, and I think it was based on questions and discussion that this sentence or these two sentences were put in. After looking at it carefully and getting some feedback from the public, I had some questions on it, and I had some concerns. And one of my concerns is, and I hear, and this is a very emotional topic. And when I look at things, I try and take my emotions out of them, and I because I don't want to. I just need to look at things, look at the facts and the statements. And I really appreciate the point that Dr. Turner made. You know, our teachers. You know, our teachers, oftentimes school is a safe place for our students. You know, parents, until a child is 18, parents are legal guardians and they're responsible for the children. I kind of look at this policy as a little bit protecting our teachers because I think that the teachers should not advise students to take actions that require parental approval up until the age of 18. So I think of it as protecting. I think I recognize the importance of having somebody to talk to. We have lots of mental health support services in our school. And so our students can be referred to a healthcare provider to answer their healthcare needs. That is not illegal. Our students can be referred to our social workers, our mental health support. We have the Care Solace Network. When there's a problem in the home and the homes are damaged, oftentimes I think, and I can't fix the homes, and I can't fix the parents, I can't fix the schools, I can't fix everything, but, you know, encouraging healing processes and communication, you know, oftentimes, you know, kids come home and like they're the only one and everybody else is doing it kind of thing. So there's nuance. And I raise 4 children, I raise 4 daughters. And so, you know, my saying to my daughters is, you know, no matter what you do, you can always come and talk to me, but I don't know that they would have felt comfortable coming and talk to me in a situation that, and so what happens in the minds of teenagers, they're just very volatile. So did we have this policy? We've had this policy. And I haven't had any feedback that the policy in existence was causing a problem in our school district. The reason it was brought up was the law was changed. Our attorneys recommended removing it. We were responsive to the feedback from our community, and there's mixed feedback, and there's strong arguments for each side, and I respect all of those arguments. I'm looking at what we're asking of our teachers, and I kind of have the feeling that this really is kind of is more of a protection for our teachers, not making any referrals that would be illegal. And so that's kind of my take on it. As far as passing judgment on what is right and what is wrong, I am not in this seat to pass judgment on what is right and what is wrong. And every situation is unique. And I think that we should have things in place where all of those emotional and those needs of those students are going to be supportive, and they're going to be referred to the best source for them to make the right decision.
Thank you for that. Is there any, Mr. Walker?
This strikes me as one of those situations where stuff is happening far above us and rolls down and hits hardest at the bottom. There's another more colloquial way of saying that, but I will not use that language here at this time. At the end of the day, our role, as I understand it, and my role also as policy chair, is to make sure that we protect the district at large, the district as an entity, which is also comprised of the human beings that make up the district without a doubt, but to protect the district as a whole and not open ourselves up to situations that could cause far more harm than they would good. It's a very difficult position to find yourself in, whether you're a group of 7, a group of 3, or 1. So my thought around this, and I think if we take a step back and look at all of the conversations that this district has had, at least since I've been on this board, around social emotional learning and protection and development, we have a tremendous infrastructure within this district to help any student who has a need of any kind. And I think what we're getting at on one side of the fence is what is the appropriate behavior of any adult within this district as it relates to a student who comes to that individual with need. That has nothing to do with this policy. It really doesn't. This policy only came about because the state said we needed to have something in respect to what it decided to do. You go back through our policy, as President Williams mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have a number of different policies that all speak to what is appropriate behavior on the part of our staff within the school. So, and I'm not minimizing this, Lord knows I'm not minimizing this, but if a student came to a teacher and said, I am thinking about the purchase of a gun off the street, then the teacher, ethically, based on the teacher's training, based on the teacher's knowledge, based on hopefully what would be common sense, but my father said if it was common, everybody would have it, and would refer the student to the appropriate persons within the district to address that particular issue. The teacher in good standing and with good sense would not step into that particular role. If the teacher were to do that, if the staff member, we'll take it out of the teacher for a moment, if the principal, if the parapro were to step into that particular role and then offer that kind of advice and say, yes, I think you should, or no, I think you shouldn't, that individual has opened him or herself up to a whole host of trouble based on current policy, this policy aside.
Right. So
it really, this is almost a non-entity piece. Whether we have it in here or not has absolutely nothing to do whether you're pro or anti or wherever your stances are, whether what your religion piece is or anything like that whatsoever. Going back to my role as policy chair, and one of the goals that I have for policy and what has become incredibly apparent since I've taken this position is that there's a lot of cleaning up we need to do with our policy. There's a lot of redundancies that exist within our policy, and this is one clear example of the redundancies that exist that could be removed that will not impact one way or another what would happen should take my judgment out, should a situation like this ever present itself. We have the measures in place within our institution to deal with. We have restorative practice facilitators. We have school counselors. We have school nurses. We have school leaders, building leaders, whom the teacher should feel very comfortable with being presented with any situation that he or she feels uncomfortable with and taking it to the leader of that particular building, and then that person then follow whatever the procedures are that reflect the best interest of the district and the student at the same time. And I'll leave it at that because the next comment might be a little bit more personal with regards to it, but I think as it relates to this policy, whether we decide to vote it in or we decide to vote it out, the only harmful benefit that comes if it were to be voted in is that we have unnecessary language in our policy. If that makes our district feel better about it, I guess I can be okay with that, but if I'm working from my policy chair piece, I would prefer that that language comes out, it's clean, we don't have that addressing or causing any other conflicts any other way with any of the other policy that we have already laid out. And I believe it's at least 3 or 4 different areas within our current manual. And I say on behalf of the committee that we are going to continue to work through, clean up, work through and get all of this connected. We'll do a better job of making sure that if something is removed, we'll cross-check and reference to make sure that whatever is removed doesn't cause a cascading set of consequences over here. And if it does, we'll make sure that that is better communicated to the community at large so that perhaps some of these misunderstandings and miscommunications won't bog things down in the future.
Thank you for that. Mrs. Smith, and then I want to check to see if anybody else has any comments before we go to Dr. Turner.
I want to thank both sides for coming out speaking. I find it interesting that people can think they know what I think, because you don't. At the end of the day, both sides were very compassionate and passionate with their beliefs. I am not God. I'm not here to judge, believe it or not. I judge no one on what their beliefs are or what they want. But I agree with Dr. Turner and Dr. Walker. Mr. Walker, I'm giving you the title.
Take it. I'm working for it.
But at the end of the day, our staff members are mandated reporters. I heard from a parent that been in the system, spoke eloquently about their beliefs, but as a mandated reporter, that mandated reporter is not going to tell that student, you better get rid of that baby. That mandated reporter is reporting it, as Mr. Walker stated, to the proper officials so there can be some help and some conversation with that parent. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is, it is not our role to get in this and let's not use the political part. Because I work with both sides. But I totally support both Mr. Walker and Dr. Turner. But at the end of the day, I encourage you to refrain from discussing what you think I think. These are my shoes, size 8.5, kid 6. So if you want to walk in them, everybody knows my number. Call me first before you make your decision on what I think and where I stand on this issue. But I wholeheartedly support their decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Turner, you are yielding your time. Does anyone else have anything to say on this topic? It sort of feels to me that we have 2 choices here. We can vote on the motion that is, pardon? We have a second. So there is no opportunity to amend the motion. So we want to call that to a vote? You do have an opportunity. Somebody could.
Can't you withdraw the motion?
Somebody can move to
Withdraw.
change the motion. And no one's going to do that, so we can go ahead and, are we calling the question? Okay.
Well, it sounds to me that there are some of us who, well, I mean, I guess we would just vote no on this and then to have another motion. Okay.
So we're calling the question.
Okay.
Mrs. Fox, would you do a roll call? Again, the motion on the table, made by Mr. Walker, made by Dr. Turner, seconded by Mrs. Smith, is to...
That's not Mrs. Smith over there. You were pointing at him as Mrs. Smith.
The motion was made by Dr. Turner and seconded by Mrs. Smith, right?
Right.
To change policy 4005 with respect to prohibited items as we just discussed. And so we're going to call the question. Mrs. Fox, please do a roll call.
Yes. Mr. Walker?
No.
Ms. Heindrich?
Yes.
Dr. Blogg?
No.
Ms. Smith?
No.
Dr. Turner?
No.
Myself, Mabel Fox, no. And Terry Weems, president.
I'm a no. So that is 6 noes and 1 yes. The motion fails. Is there anyone who wants to entertain a second motion? Dr. Turner.
Thank you. I move that the board strike in its entirety policy 405 as it relates to prohibition of referral and assistance.
Second.
There is a motion on the table made by Dr. Turner, seconded by Mr. Walker, to strike the section 4005 on prohibition or referral of assistance as recommended by our attorneys initially. Is there any discussion? Seeing,
So this is covered in different parts of the policy?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and it's just redundant in this part?
That is correct. If the
So that
state never came with that law, this would never have been put into policy to begin with.
Okay, all right. So we're just,
The law is gone, the policy goes with it.
and students that have problems will be referred to proper sources for
Students who
proper
have
support.
any issues that are brought to any of the staff at FPS, staff at FPS are obligated to follow the appropriate protocols laid out for handling those situations, coming from their building leaders and coming from the leadership of the district.
thank you for clarifying that. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Fox, can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Heindrich?
Yes.
Dr. Blogg?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Myself, Mabel Fox, yes. Mrs. Terry Weems, president.
Yes. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for spending the time. I think this was a really robust conversation, and I appreciate the different perspectives here. We, we'll listen to each other. We will continue to do that, and we will agree and or disagree respectfully. I appreciate the civil discourse here, and also appreciate any members who came to speak with us. Again, we are not here to decide on that topic. That is not a Board of Education matter, but we will decide what is appropriate in terms of, what we're doing at the school level. So thank you to anyone who came to speak on the topic. Again, we're not going to get into into those kinds of details. All right, we have another item on the agenda related to the FPS scoreboards. Is there, Dr. Turner?
I move that the Board of Education approve option 2 that includes traditional scoreboards with sound systems for the main fields, traditional scoreboards on the auxiliary fields, and traditional scoreboards for baseball fields, softball fields, and middle school fields with a not to exceed $495,000 as presented.
Support.
I got $495,000.
Oh,
yeah. Support. Motion made by Dr. Turner, supported by Mrs. Smith for option 2 with respect to scoreboards, which is the option that addresses all of the needs with the exception of the video and is at a cost, at least for the scoreboards, at an amount not to exceed $495,000. Is there any discussion?
Just a point of clarification that option 2 also includes the middle school board replacement, but it's not going in as an alternative. It's going in as a point of fact. Is that correct?
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep. Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote on this as well, Ms. Fox?
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Heindrich?
yes.
Dr. Blogg?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Myself, Mabel Fox, yes. And President Weems.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you again for very good discussion on this topic. And we will move forward on the next item that is up for approval, which is the OCSBA proposed bylaw amendment. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, just as a review, this was for the election for the Board of Directors. They're asking to make an exception for the current year so that in January, board member can serve out the remainder of their term. So I move that the Board of Education approve the Oakland County School Board Association proposed bylaw amendment as presented.
Support.
Motion made by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Dr. Turner, to approve the OCSBA proposed bylaw amendment as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. And next we have a motion on the Chromebook purchase. Is there a motion? Mr. Walker?
I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of 500 Chromebooks in the amount of $155,300 from SAE, am I saying that correctly? SAE Computer Products, utilizing the REMC contract pricing.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, supported by Mrs. Smith, to approve the purchase of 500 Chromebooks in the amount of $155,300 from SAE Computer Products, utilizing the REMC contract pricing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yes.
Dr. Blog?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Myself, Mabel Fox, yes. President Terry Weems.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Fox. That motion passes. We'll move on to School of Choice. Mrs. Heinrich?
I move that the Board of Education approve Section 105 Limited School of Choice for the 2025-2026 as presented.
Support.
Motion made by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Dr. Turner, to approve Section 105 Limited Schools of Choice for 2025-26 as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yes.
Dr. Blog?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Myself, Mabel Fox, yes. And President Weems.
Yes, thank you. That motion also passes. And finally, resolution authorizing 2025 refunding bonds. Mr. Walker?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing 2025 refunding bonds and waive the reading of the resolution.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, supported by Dr. Turner, to approve the resolution authorizing 2025 refunding bonds and waive the reading of the resolution. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Heinrich?
Yes.
Dr. Blog?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Myself, Mabel Fox, yes. And President Weems?
Yes. Thank you. That motion also passes. We'll now move to items from the treasurer.
Oh, that's me. Hold on. Here it is. Okay. I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditure printout dated October 22nd, 2024 as follows. General Fund, $11,287,455. General Fund Athletics, $202,946. Capital Projects 2020 Bond Fund, $1,607,757. Nutrition Services Fund, $445,432. Benefits Stabilization Fund, $1,279,744, for a total of $14,823,334.
Support.
Motion made by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Mrs. Smith, to approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditure printout dated October 22nd. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Is there a motion for the consent agenda? Mrs. Smith?
I move that the Board of Education approve the October 22nd, 2024 regular meeting agenda as presented.
Consent agenda.
Oh, oops. I done read the wrong one. I'm sorry. Approval of the minutes, October 8th, 2024 regular meeting, October 10th, 2024 Communications Community Engagement Committee meeting, October 15th, 2024 Facilities Finance Committee meeting, October 17th, 2024 Policy Committee meeting, approval of the Parent Advisory Committee representative, Dana Burton, 2025 Resolution Compliance PA 152, Head Start Director's Monthly Report, and personnel items. And I'm sorry.
Support.
Motion made by Ms. Smith and supported by Mrs. Heinrich to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. Do we have any reports from board representatives?
Yes.
Yes.
From the Education Foundation, please buy your tickets to the Toast for Education and support our Farmington Hills Education Foundation. It's a wonderful, delightful evening, and the funding goes to a good cause to help our students and teachers.
Thank you. I most certainly will be doing that. Any other reports from board representatives? We do have a report from our HR director. I'm going to ask that he come up to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Paddock.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, President Weems, for inviting me to speak just prior to our adjournment this evening. In late September, I provided you with an update on an unfair labor practice charge against Farmington Public Schools dating back to August of 2022. Tonight, as part of the district's effort to bring closure to those proceedings related to that charge, I would like to read a notice to all employees. At a public hearing before the Michigan Employment Relations Commission, also known as MERC, on an unfair labor practice charge filed by the unions, Farmington Public Schools Education Association, Farmington Public Schools Educational Support Professionals, Farmington Public Schools Transportation Association, and Farmington Public Schools Maintenance and Cafeteria Association. The commission found that the employer, Farmington Public Schools, has committed an unfair labor practice in violation of the Public Employment Relations Act, also known as PARA. Pursuant to the MERC's order, we hereby notify all employees that we will not interfere with, restrain, or coerce our employees in the exercise of rights protected by Section 9 of PARA because of their union or other activities protected by that law, including but not limited to the choice of whether to endorse political candidates for elected office within respondents' organization. In addition to this reading, I do want you to be aware that I've directed counsel to discontinue any appeal of the MERC's decision. As always, I look forward to continuing our district work with the support of all of our Farmington Association groups. Enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paddock. Are there any other reports from board representatives? Seeing none, this meeting is now adjourned.